In this presentation, we will discuss the differences between the ACT and the new SAT, which is the test administered by College Board from 2016 onward. And this will help educators, parents, and students understand the way the tests work and decide which test might be a better fit for certain people. Two things we should note up front are that both tests are accepted at every accredited college and university in the United States. And statistics show about 80% of students score in an equivalent score range no matter which test they take. So the primary reason a student might prefer one test to the other is usually due to personality and personal preference, not the potential for a significant score difference. First, let's discuss score range. The new SAT has two scoring categories. First is math, and second is evidence-based reading and writing. Now, there are a total of 800 points that it's possible for a student to earn in each section, for a total combined possible score of 1,600. Although the essay is optional, some colleges and universities require it. The essay is scored separately. The ACT has 4 mandatory sections. Each section has a score range from 1 to 36. The score from all of those mandatory sections, those scores are averaged together for a total possible test score out of 36. The essay is optional on this test as well, although some colleges and universities do require it, and the essay is scored separately on the ACT also. The method used to score both tests is pretty similar. Only right answers affect the student's score. Wrong answers and questions that are left blank do not add or detract from the student's total score, and essays are scored separately for both tests. First, let's go over the different subjects and topics that the new SAT covers so we can compare those to what the ACT tests. There are 2 broad categories of the new SAT. There's math and there's evidence-based reading and writing. The new SAT also includes an optional essay. On the math portion of this test, students will see a focus on problem solving, data analysis, algebra, and geometry, with a bit of advanced math such as basic trigonometry. On the evidence-based reading and writing portion of the test, students will run into 2 subsections. The reading test is one, and the writing and language test is the other. In the reading test, students encounter 3 longer passages and 1 pair of shorter passages in 4 different categories. For the writing and language portion, students are tested in their understanding of English grammar, diction or word usage, style, etc. Finally, the optional essay. It's a 50-minute section where students have to read an argument that is presented and then write an essay analyzing that argument. Students are evaluated on 3 things: how well they understand the argument, how well they analyze the argument, and the quality of their writing. Students do not form their own opinion on the argument. They just have to explain the opinion presented. For the ACT, the subjects tested are a bit broader than the ones on the SAT, but they cover very similar information. The 4 mandatory subjects are math, science reasoning, English, and reading. The ACT also includes an optional essay, which some colleges and universities do require. Now in math, the ACT tests basic math, algebra, geometry, and simple trigonometry. The science reasoning section requires no outside knowledge of science. It is more like a series of science-based reading passages that include graphs and charts. Students must understand the information given in the charts and graphs and use it along with what is written in the passages to draw conclusions about the information. English tests students' knowledge of standard grammar, style, diction, etc. Reading requires students to understand passages and answer questions in 4 set subject areas. And for the optional essay, students are given a writing prompt that explains 2 opposing points of view on an issue that applies to high school students today. Students are given 30 minutes to choose a side and write an argumentative essay explaining why the side that they have chosen is the side that should be preferred. Here's the breakdown on the time allotments for the new SAT. For math, there are about 57 questions. Students are given 80 minutes to answer those questions. For language and writing, 44 questions in 35 minutes. For reading, 52 questions in 65 minutes. For the optional essay, students are allowed 50 minutes. Overall, the test is 3 hours long, and for students who opt to take the 50-minute optional essay, the time is 3 hours and 50 minutes of actual testing time. But expect to spend longer at the test center. Signing in, listening to the proctor's instructions, and taking several breaks adds more time to the process. For the ACT, the time allotted for the mandatory portion of the test is just under 3 hours. So for math, students get 60 minutes to answer 60 questions. For reading, 35 minutes for 40 questions. In English, students have 45 minutes for 75 questions. For science, 35 minutes to answer 40 questions. For the optional essay, 30 minutes to read the assignment and write the essay. The total testing time is 2 hours and 55 minutes without the optional essay, and 3 hours 25 minutes with the essay. And of course, as with the ACT, the actual process takes longer than the testing time once you account for sign-in, instructions, breaks, etc. For the new SAT, students encounter 3 long passages and 1 pair of short passages covering the following categories: U.S. and World Literature, History and Social Studies, Science, and United States founding documents or the Great Global Conversation. That's culturally important works that deal with civil and political life. For example, Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. For a few of the questions, students will also need to analyze charts or graphs in order to answer correctly. The ACT reading section tests students in 4 areas: prose fiction or literature, natural science, social science, and the humanities. Questions determine how well students understood the passage. Some questions might ask the student to identify the main idea of the passage, to make inferences, draw generalizations, and understand vocabulary in proper context. So here's the basic breakdown of the new SAT versus the ACT. For the score range, the new SAT score is from 400 to 1600 total, and on the ACT, it's scored from 1 to 36. The scoring method is that only right answers are scored for the new SAT and only right answers are scored for the ACT. Test length for the new SAT is 3 hours, and a 15-minute essay. For the ACT, 2 hours and 55 minutes, and a 30-minute essay. The essay is optional for both the new SAT and the ACT. And the assignment for the essay on the new SAT is to read and analyze an argument and to explain that argument. And on the ACT, you take a side and you make your own argument. Calculator use on the new SAT is allowed on all the math except for a short 20-question no calculator section. On the ACT, calculator is allowed on all math. The reading topics on the new SAT and the ACT are predictable, and the new SAT is administered 7 times a year, while the ACT is administered 6 times a year. The ACT and the new SAT are similar tests that differ in a few key areas. Students often prefer one of the tests over the other based on their personalities, but most students perform in the same range on both tests as far as their score is concerned. So whichever test students decide to take, proper preparation is a key to a score that opens doors. With this information, you should be one step closer to making an informed decision about which test to take. Good luck and happy studying!